right, Brooke, afternoon. How's it going?
Conrad, how are you, buddy? What's new in your world?
Doing pretty good. Can't complain. The weather's finally turning here, so we're into spring. It feels like actual spring here in the Carolinas, which is a good thing for me. It's been a very cold and a very isolating winter, so it's good to see some good stuff on the horizon. Although we had some insane wind this week. There was like 50-mile-an-hour winds. It was like gusting and stuff all over the yard. But hey, hopefully the weather's turning and the wind will go to a more modest level. So
no golfing in those kind of winds, right?
I will say, if you did golf in those winds, which I cannot confirm or deny, if I did golf in those winds, perhaps your ability to predict how it's going to react on the ball is not going to be very strong. Like maybe you hit a 7-iron and it goes 120 yards because there's wind, and then maybe you hit it one the next hole and it goes 210. I don't know. I couldn't confirm or deny, but that's what I've heard might happen if you were to play golf in those kind of winds.
That's what a normal golf game looks like for me. With no winds.
Hey, it's all about consistency when it comes to those things. But all good. Well,
here's a fun fact actually with golf. If you, I'm going to embarrass myself. The last time I picked up a golf club, I left on a stretcher, and I'll just leave it at that.
I did know about that, but I think you said to me one point, Brooke, that you didn't want to talk about it, so I won't bring it back up. But you brought it up this time, not me. So I know, unfortunately, there was an injury that sustained last time. So that's a bummer. But hopefully,
Conrad, I actually did golf in Myrtle a couple weeks ago, so I can confirm it was quite windy. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It's windy and cold here. You got to come back again, Chad. But come back in the later spring or in the early fall. That's when it's just primo here to be playing. So. Well, awesome. Well, Brooke, we got Chad with us today. Maybe you recall, or maybe we could talk about it for a second. How'd you originally connect with Chad? It seems like we've been talking a little bit before we hit record. Really interesting model. Excited to dive in today.
Yeah, no. So Chad's got a great business, and I many people don't know this, but I play kind of like tech support and customer support for Comparent, my sister company from Vintory. And I was noticing his listing, and I was like, man, he could really. I knew he had a great business. And I was like, he could really optimize this listing. So I just reached out to him, just sent him an email. And then I think he then connected the dots that I was also founder and CEO of Vintory, which he was a Vintory partner. And we kind of ended up chatting ever since then, and been a great partner, doing really, really well. And his Comparent listing looks fantastic, by the way, too.
Right on. Well, Chad, it's good to hear that you're kind of into the ecosystem a little bit, because that'll give you some good context. But maybe the listener hasn't heard of you. We just met them for the first time, so we're excited to learn more about you. But for the listener, could you give some additional information, your background, how you got into short-term rentals, and a little bit more about Checkmate too, if you're comfortable with it?
Sure. Yeah. So as you guys know, Chad Phillis is my name. Checkmate Rentals is my company. We started in 2020, early 2020, like peak COVID time. I think it was late February. And I actually just got fired because the other company that I was with essentially, went under because of COVID. So it was a property management company, and got a lot of great experience there. I always knew though that I wanted to start my own thing, and I was taking notes while I was with them on how I wanted to form my company, what I would do different than the vast majority of management companies out there, and. Long story short, got that opportunity a lot faster than I was expecting. I was getting married in a month, lost my job, and a handful of the clients reached out and said, hey, we really like you. We trust you. We think you could do a great job. Can you help us? And that's when I took the leap, started out with a couple properties, and, now we're about 150 under management currently. So growing really fast. And on this year, we're on really, really good pace.
Right on. I'm always curious sometimes on the name origin of the company. So Checkmate, are you like a grandmaster chess player? What's the context behind that one? Always curious sometimes.
I'm a probably slightly below average chess player. I do enjoy it. I probably can only beat my dad, but that's about it. But funny story on the name creation. I was thinking, what do I call this? My new business. And I was over at my parents' house. My dad and I were actually working out and watching TV. Because he has a real nice weight room. He used to be a power lifter. So we were working out, and someone on the TV said, Checkmate, because it was like a lawyer show, like, they got you. He was like, Checkmate, like, you win, that's it. And it stuck, and that's what we did.
All right. I like that. We've heard a few interesting naming stories, I would say, Brooke, over the, past however many episodes at this point. So it's good to hear another one there. Just
it's a good one.
Inspiration. Awesome. Well, let's dive in, Chad, if you're comfortable with it. So the way we're going to go through the things today is talk about the top 10 mistakes. We're going to kind of walk through kind of what you've learned so far. You're a few years in at this point, so I'm sure you've learned some good things along the way. And obviously some growth has come, so you must have figured out some things as well. So if you're cool with it, we're going to dive right in. Number one, not realizing the value of networking when you started. So all of your success could have happened a lot sooner had you networked with the right people earlier. So walk me through what you do today, or what's kind of your current philosophy on finding the right people to talk to and chat with them and connect with them networking wise.
Sure. Yeah. So I always knew the value of networking, right? I was part of many different networking groups. Before I was even in short-term rentals, I was an insurance agent, and I still technically am. My dad owns an agency. So I was part of a lot of like local networking groups, and I saw the power of those in connecting with individuals who, are working with your current clientele, maybe in a different fashion. So I was just thinking of how can I do this on a national scale, right? Because we're a national company and we don't just manage in Pittsburgh or in Myrtle Beach. So what I started doing was going to Facebook, looking up different groups, looking at different owners of companies in the industry, and really making a targeted approach to talk to all these people. And get on calls with them. So I started doing that not too long ago, but I didn't do it at the beginning. And that's why I put it in there. Is I wish I would have done that at the beginning, because some of our biggest and best successes have come from that. Just having conversations with other business owners instead of trying to grind away and talk to one host at a time, which is fine. We still do that too. But some of the really big opportunities come from other big players in the game, and just reaching out and wanting to connect.
And is this to get additional clients, like get new owners in your rental program, or meaning for just learning, from other colleagues in the industry?
Well, yeah. So ultimate goal, right, is to get a lot more owners working with us. But I would say learning as well. Learning is a huge thing, but building referral programs has been a really nice thing. So not exactly maybe other managers, right? But people who are working with short-term rental homeowners in another fashion. Maybe it's short-term rental brokerages or people who have a certain software in the industry, and partnering with those type of companies and sending referrals back and forth has been a big part of our growth.
Well, it sounds like those lessons of being an insurance agent paid off well, because obviously, for insurance, it sounds like that's right up your alley to network that way and get additional clients, because that's how you have to do it. So it's so funny, Conrad. I feel like nobody really does it that way. Nobody really. Obviously, some people network at things, but they've never thought, other than realtors, they've never really thought of other business leaders out there as good sources of leads.
I think honestly, Brooke, we could probably do a whole episode or a whole topic on all the people that can refer business. I think we touched on this in the last episode. Like a cleaner could be a referral source for you. Hey, I cleaned for this other RBO, and they don't like who they're working with, or they need help. That's a way to go about it. But yeah, most people don't think of that. They just do, like you said, the basics. And I think the problem with the realtor one, maybe you could speak on this, Brooke, for a second, is they make it very, well, here's what I can do for you. And they never think about what the benefit is to the realtor. Like they don't think about the concept of like the networking has to not just be, all right, you scratch my back. It's also like, how am I going to help that person drive more business? Maybe talk about that for a second.
Well, yeah. When I was at Orlando, we were the best vacation rental management company by far in that market. Even our competitors would say, oh yeah, you guys are the best, So, but what would end up happening is like we had so many leads coming in that we would end up actually like funnel those leads to them. So actually these realtors, we flipped the script, right? As Buck talked about last podcast, we flipped that script where it ended up where we were giving them the leads and they were coming to us, almost like begging us for business because we were sending them so much.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Well, so your next one then, Chad talks a little bit about maybe the same concept, but doing a little bit more on the marketing side. So networking is great. You can get referrals and people can kind of find out that way. But obviously it helps that there's more than one source, more than one, leg on the chair is the way that I've been taught that concept before. So number 2 is not spending money on marketing until 4 years in the business. You probably could have had double the portfolio by now, at least if you had been doing that. Obviously incoming leads is the priority. It's the lifeblood of the business. So what's kind of been your marketing shifts and changes that you made to potentially increase your lead flow? And what are you planning on doing more of in 2025?
Yeah. I think, well, obviously Vintory, right? That's one of our marketing strategies. You guys are, the market leader in what you do there. And, we were really just relying on referrals, and we were getting a lot of them. And that's important. That kind of told me, hey, we're doing something good. People are referring us. That means we're, a decent business, right? Or else people wouldn't refer us. But I wanted to grow a lot faster. And, in this industry, it's a little different, right? Because we're selling a service, not a product. If you're selling a product, the ways to market, right? Maybe you do ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, whatever. There's a certain amount of things that you do to sell a product. But for a service, there's a lot more. It's a lot more in depth and a lot more complicated to figure out marketing. So I think that was one of the reasons why we didn't spend money earlier. We tried to spend a little bit, but kind of failed in in what we were doing with some paid ads. So we stopped that. We just kind of focused on making our service as good as it could possibly be. We got to a point where we did have a good bit of extra money for marketing, and that's when we partnered with companies like yourself, like Vintory, and getting on programs, like Comparent. But we also really did a lot of stuff with SEO and our website, because in this industry, there's a lot of organic search for short-term rental management, whether it's people who are self-managing and now they're looking for a company because they're sick and tired of it, or people switching companies, which happens all the time. So we're putting a lot of effort into that, and we had our two best months of sales this year in January and February because of it. So we're seeing a direct payoff of our investment.
That's great. Well, yeah, we're excited. Happy to have you as a customer, and you guys are killing it over there. So it's funny. Somebody asked me the other day. They're like, "Hey, Brooke, what percentage of my revenue should I budget towards new inventory acquisition?" And I actually had to think about it for a little while, and I kind of reverse engineered into this. And I don't know if it obviously depends on like the size of the company and things like that, but realistically, 10% of your revenue, your actual revenue, you should put towards new inventory acquisition. So this isn't obviously a top line gross booking revenue. This is what you're actually bringing in commissions. But almost the more important question is, how efficient are you? What's that CAC? What's that customer acquisition cost? And what does that relate to as far as the actual gross booking revenue of a property and the revenue? So what we always kind of strive for is what we call a 12-month CAC recovery. So if you can recover your CAC in 12 months of profits, you are home free. Because if you think about it, that means year one, the average property stays in a rental program for 10 years. So that means year one is you're just recouping your customer acquisition cost. But from year 2 through year 10 is all profits. So that's kind of our target. So again, 10% of your revenues should go towards new inventory acquisition, and then a 12-month CAC recovery is your other target.
Yeah. I think it's when people are beginning to spend that marketing. I think that's a common one, Brooke. The one I always get is like, on the guest marketing side is like, I can't outspend the big guys. And what I always respond is that the goal is not to outspend them. The goal is just for your ads to be profitable. So let's not get all worried about the fact that Airbnb has a bigger budget than us. That's always going to be the case, right? Other advertisers are always going to have more money than you. The question is only the money that I'm spending. Is it working well? Is it meeting my goals? Going back to your point on the owner side, it's, am I acquiring that lead at a good enough price where I convert enough and the CAC recovery is there? On the guest marketing side, it's, I'm putting these dollars in here. Is it profitable enough where I can keep going and keep spending more on that side of thing? I think people just get very panicky about competition, or they just worry too much about it, broadly speaking.
What do you actually recommend any kind of budget, Conrad? Like, do you say, hey, you should put 20% of your revenues towards guest marketing? Like, do you have like a rule of thumb?
I think it's a lot more nuanced question, because everyone nowadays that I talk to seems to have very different opinions on how they do the fee side of direct bookings, right? So, for example, a lot of our clients now are raising their prices on their website by a decent clip, adding in these like so-called res fees or admin fees, so that they get more profit, significantly more profit from a direct booking than they do from an OTA booking. And I think that was not the case for a little while. People were just like, oh, book on our website directly, it's cheaper. And then they thought that was enough of a reason for a guest to want to book with them directly. But the trouble is that only takes you so far. Like, a guest does appreciate saving money, but then you need like ammo, you need like dollars to come in and figure out how to get there. So I think it's a very nuanced question, because it depends a lot on average booking revenue, how much you actually make, how much you take home, how much you collect in that booking. And then, what are you comfortable investing? And when we do our onboarding form now, not to get like too in the sauce here, Brooke, but maybe it's something that people can learn from. We actually ask clients like, to almost pick 3 levels, like more conservative, like just give me the most profitable campaigns. I want to keep my spend kind of low and kind of dip my toe in the water. Then we kind of got the middle. Hey, we're willing to spend a little bit. Here's kind of a guideline. Maybe I'll spend a few thousand a month, but not much more. And then we have an option on the top where it's like, I want to be aggressive. I'm hitting the gas pedal. I'm going hard. Like, I'm okay with a little bit less profitability if it means that we get a lot more bookings in the door. And it's been funny to see like a conversation that we'll have versus how people actually behave and act when it comes to like taking out the credit card. So we'll have people spending 5%, look, we'll have people spending 30% and everything in between, because it depends a lot on how aggressive they want to be and how almost like motivated they are too, to like get off an OTA platform, or how limiting some of these OTA platforms are and actually giving people bookings in some markets. Some people are really struggling in the OTAs right now. So it's such a variable depending on those things.
It reminds me of you should do this. My financial advisor, the first time I met with him, he had me fill out this whole entire like survey, like how conservative I was, how aggressive I was. And the funny part was at the end, he goes, Brooke, you set a record. You were literally the most aggressive investor I've ever had.
I'm not shocked. I remember doing a similar form, and it was basically the financial advisor's way of telling you it's inevitable that at some point in time, obviously spring of 2020, we learned this, that your portfolio, whatever you invested with me, will drop significantly. And I want to make sure you don't do something stupid and go in there and pull it all out, in that moment. Like the portfolio went from 100,000 to like 70,000, and you don't panic and go, I just lost $30,000. And you just keep DCAing in there, keep investing in there. And then long-term, it's all going to come back more. And of course, that's exactly what happened. I'm sure your version of it might have been, or the one that maybe sticks in your mind more would have been 2008 and that crisis. But obviously it happened again in a very brief period of time in spring of 2020 when I actually had some money in there. In 08, I had no money, so I didn't need to worry about that. But, that's the hook there. So yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. But yeah, I think that marketing piece is so important. Well, let's Chad go to number 3 then. You talked more about not necessarily the marketing side of the clients or the homeowners, but once you get them in the door, what's their personality? So this was kind of a greatest hit, I would say, if we could call it that already, because this one seems to come up a lot. But taking on clients because their properties instead of their personality. I did like the way you worded that. That's a unique way of wording that. You went through a period where you bring on any property, any body. If they got a warm body, you'll take it. But you later learned that you got to say no to people if they treat you or your team badly. So what's kind of been the process of determining who is and isn't a good fit, and how are you now kicking out the bad ones that aren't a good fit for you in your program?
Yeah, so it starts up front, right? On the sales call. It's figuring out who that person is, what they stand for, and how they're going to treat you. Because normally how they treat myself or the salesperson on that sales call is a similar way how they're going to treat our team when we're operating. Are they extremely needy? Right? Are they a little bit mean? Are they agitated? Are they, aggressive? Do they seem like they're trying to do things the wrong way? Right? Like skirt some of the rules, things of that sort. So it's all a judgment of character up front, and that's something that we didn't do it all before. Like I said, and it came back to bite us a couple times where we were dealing with people that if I knew they were that way from the beginning, I would have never brought them on as clients. So it's something that, yes, you are turning down some money, right? Because, if you have a good salespeople, you can sell just about anyone, but that's not what you want, because it puts extra stress on your team. It makes your operations run a lot less smoothly. It causes people on your own team to quit, right? You have a higher turnover because they don't want to deal with these people. So, I do a lot of sales calls myself in the business, and with some people on our sales team, I always tell them, don't be too judgmental, right? But just get an idea. Is this person someone that you would like to work with? And if not, why? And then we can make a judgment call if they decide to work with us, if we're going to decide to work with them, right? Because we don't just say yes to anybody. It has to be a win-win scenario for both people. So if they say yes to us, great. We still have to say yes to them because there's 2 buyers in the situation, right? They're buying us and we're buying them. It's not someone selling and someone's buying. I can't remember what book I read that in. It might have been one of Dan Kennedy's books, but he said the best situations are where there's 2 buyers, and so that's what we do. We just focus on is this person going to be a good fit? Is their property going to be a good fit? And if the property and the personality are both really good, then it's going to be a fantastic client. So,
And who ultimately makes that call? Is that you making that call? Is it one of your teammates? Is it whoever's like taking the call? How do you all decide that? Do you have like a interview checklist? Do you have like a scoring system? Like I'm always intrigued by this because this as Conrad said, this came up. I mean, dozens and dozens of times, and it just seems like it was like the most popular response. But like, yeah, how do you ultimately make that call?
yeah, so we don't have any formal structure, right, of doing this. I'm a big believer in gut feelings, right? You can get a sense of who someone is and what their personality is, and if they're a good person or not. Essentially, when you're talking to them, and if my gut's telling me, hey, don't bring this person on, it's just going to be terrible headaches down the road. That's enough for me, and we just don't do it. Um, but
And what if it's one of your teammates that's talking to them and they're unsure? Do you then get on the phone with them and kind of check it out, or is it you? You
yes,
take all the calls, the inbound owner calls.
well, I do take most actually myself. That will change as we start getting a lot more leads in the door. It's going to change very soon here. But yes, if it's another salesperson and they're unsure, then I jump on a call and say, hey, I'm Chad Phillis. I'm the owner. I heard you're interested in our service. I'd love to learn more about you and your property, and see if we'd be a good fit to work together, and start the conversation off like that, and then we can. I dive into some questions, just asking them about who they are, what they do, what they're looking for in our service, and that kind of opens up the door for me to get a sense of if they're going to be a good client or not.
Makes sense. Love that.
Yeah, I think Chad, you had a comment there that really resonated with me, which is that a great salesperson will often push through a lot of people, which is kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Like, I think I've been inflicted with that disease before of actually working with someone who's really good at sales, and they can convince themselves and almost like talk you into the fact that it's going to be good. As, oh no, this person's going to be a good fit. It's going to work out just fine. And then what happens with a lot of salespeople is that once the contract's signed, once the ink's dry, certainly once they get their commission, they are out of 5,000 and they're on to the next deal, right? That they need to close, which is fine. That's what a salesperson should do. But without kind of almost like checks and balances, right? It's almost like a government. You need like a check and balance to be able to say, like, is there someone that can verify that this person is actually a good fit, who's not motivated by commission, who's not driven by commission? Because the salesperson wants their commission, they want to move on. So I think that's a little red flag that most people don't talk about, but I've encountered that myself for sure, personally.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess because I do most of them myself right now, it's a little different, right? Because I'm not getting a sales commission. I'm the owner of the business.
Right.
So
and you have all the context. That's what's missing, right? Is like sometimes I think one thing that I've encountered, with the problem set that I'm describing about the salespeople is that they don't actually understand sometimes that like how problematic a bad client can be. They look at it and go like, oh, you guys can handle them. That's what you do all day, right? What's the problem? They're in their sales world. They're not thinking about the ops world. And so when you have the full 360 view of sales and ops, you see like, yeah, who we let in the door matters a lot, because that's going to almost like impact the quality of life that we have, day to day, the type of clients that we deal with, and the types of people that we want to deal with. And when you let the wrong people in, your quality of life goes down. And if you're dealing with a lot of those clients, as I do in my own business, it becomes a lot less appealing to let a jerk through the door, which I know is something that we've like I said, talked about a lot.
Well, not to beat a dead horse here, but when I had Vantage, we actually had, when you originated in the early days at least, when you originated a new deal, we had like 4 or 5 like these hybrid workers. Then they were responsible for generating new owners, and then that was like their portfolio. So they managed that portfolio of properties and owners. So they were responsible for ensuring that property was, getting, booked. They were responsible for if there's any kind of guest issues, necessarily on that. And, so they would, it kind of was a self-policing thing because they were responsible for it. So they didn't want to bring in a bad property because they had to deal with all the guest issues that were responsible for that. Or if that owner was a jerk, they had to, be responsible for that owner. Where as we scaled later on, we did it more of like an assembly line. We only had salespeople that were signing up properties. Then we had an owner relations team. We had a guest relations team. So you actually had a little bit of a barrier there. So you were a little bit more prone to bring on a crappy property or a crappy owner because you didn't have to worry about it at that point. But that self-policing, like you manage everything. I remember specifically this one of our property managers, she's like, I am not signing up that property because I don't want to get, the guest complaints every single week and I got to be responsible for it,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're right, Brooke. As you get bigger, it's like, obviously that can't continue forever. And it's probably one of those like personality assessment things that we talk about where it's like that person doing good at sales probably isn't good at those other things. So it's like, it wouldn't even be optimal probably. But again, just the idea of like, hey, these are the types of people we don't want and why. Sometimes that communication loop can help someone because then they go like, I do want to sign this person, but I also don't want like Susan and ops to hate me if I sign this person. So it's like, that's part of the rub as well as you get a little bigger. But let's go to, I think we can combine number 4 and 5 here, Chad, because I think they kind of talk the same problem, which is more like tools, technology, and process. So number 4 you mentioned was not systemizing processes from the beginning, led to scaling pains and issues that could have been avoided. And same kind of thing, I guess, with number 5 here. So I'll kind of sandwich them together. Number 5 is not leveraging a quality CRM earlier for follow-up in organizations. So talk with me about that, both things. So how'd you get the right CRM in place, and how are you building some of those processes for both the CRM and other tools inside the business?
Yeah. So CRM, I would say more on the sales side, right? Like on the guest side, we have that in place, and that was good. We had that from the beginning. We've switched multiple different softwares since then, and came back to one of them after realizing the grass wasn't greener on the other side. So that was good. So communicating with guests, that's not what I was really referring to there, but I think on the sales side, right, and on the networking side. Is Google Sheets is not the best for that. Without the automations and the pipelines and the sequences. So using Vintory's, for example, Vintory, fantastic CRM. We obviously weren't using you guys before we started working with you. I think we used Pipedrive, and we still use them in some fashion as well. They're a good one. We've used all of them, HubSpot, a bunch of different ones. I really like Pipedrive, and being able to set up a lot of these automations for follow-up has been really good, and being able to track our sales and our leads has been massive. Using Vintory and Pipedrive in combination has been really, really good. So I think that's what I know that's what I was referring to there. And then, not systemizing. I can't even talk. Systemizing our processes.
Yeah.
Systemizing.
It's a tough word.
Systemizing our processes from the beginning. So this was about more so our operations team, right? Like when problems arise, what are we going to do? How should our team think about solving these problems? What should be the flow chart that they're going to follow if the lock is broken, right? Or if the batteries are dead in the lock, or if the sheets are dirty, or if someone finds hair in the tub, or whatever the billion things that could be wrong when a guest is doing it. So we went through a lot of effort creating these training systems that people can follow. Even someone brand new who starts working with our team, if a big problem hits them the first day that they're working with us, they will be able to follow a thought process that we created. And it's okay, well, what would Chad do if this problem happened? Here's what we would think. Here's what we would do. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. And it's been very, very valuable, because before I was handling all that stuff myself. And because I didn't document it early enough and create it into a system, I was doing a lot more work than I needed to for a very long time.
Going back to the CRM comment, what's so funny is whenever I ask a partner, I ask them, do you have a CRM? They say yes. And then I say, on the owner side, they're like, oh, no, on the guest side. They almost always have one on the guest side. And I understand that you need that because they know it's going to make them more productive. It's going to obviously, get repeat guests and everything else. But when on the owner side, they always say no. And it blows my mind. Again, we know how valuable these leads are. We know how valuable these management contracts are. And I'm like, get something, just get something, whether it's HubSpot, free, HubSpot literally has a free account you can get, or if you can get obviously something like Vintory, our CRM, that we have, but get something that has marketing automation built into it too. Because look, I've been in your shoes. You're wearing 18 hats. You don't have the time to do the constant follow-up. And we found, again, we have more data on this than probably anybody in this industry. We've helped, over 900 companies now with their inventory growth efforts. And we've realized that as much as 50% of all the deals that are being closed are deals that are in a long-term nurturing sequence. And what that means is the person inquired, they weren't ready to buy there then. Maybe it was because they just bought the house, they need to do some renovations. Maybe they're sitting on $80,000 worth of rentals, but again, if you just put it into a long-term nurturing sequence, let the software do the work for you. It'll do it. You don't have the time and the bandwidth to do it. Again, you're wearing 18 different hats, and these people will come back. But again, you have this software, take advantage of it. It's like, I always say, it's like you're Tony Stark, and just, give Tony Stark that Iron Man suit, make you more productive and more efficient, more effective.
Absolutely.
I'm a big Pipedrive fan as well, Chad, and I found it to work really well. I think it's a good combination of simple to use. You can get anybody to kind of figure out that system pretty quickly, and any CRM is better for sure than no CRM. And I know, Brooke, you told the story before about talking to people, and it's like, oh yeah, I got a sticky note on my screen, like I got to follow up with 3 leads. It's like that sticky note concept is one that we've talked about before on social. I know that's a common one. Well, number 6 then, Chad, goes more into the concept, like the legal side of things. So number 6 was not creating good enough contract and agreement early on. Perhaps would have saved you a lot of headache and made you a lot more money had you had that dialed in. So what's kind of been your evolution here? What kind of contract and agreement do you work on now? How do you make sure people sign that so that everything's clear as you begin working with them?
Sure. Yeah, this one's a big one. The cancellation clauses, right? Like if a host wants to terminate, right? What's the process? How does that work? What bookings do we get paid for, or which ones do we not? When can they leave? Who's keeping the listings? All those sort of things. And, I've always been sort of a handshake, take me at my word type of guy, right? And if people early on wanted to sign those type of deals, yeah, sure thing. Let's work together. We'll figure it out. Not thinking about the worst case type of scenario. I think one thing that really helped me, because I'm always a very positive person. I always look at the bright side, and I actually had to get a business partner who's sort of the opposite, right? And he's the guy who's going to put in all these stops and make sure we don't get the raw end of a deal. And once I brought him on, he's a fantastic person, by the way. He's awesome. He's brilliant. He helped us create some really good contracts, right? To stop that from happening, because, whether someone was, trying to leave a contract early or whatever the case may be, before we didn't really have any way to enforce anything. And, now we do. And so it saved us a lot of headaches, and not just with hosts, right? But with partners. For a while we did white labeling of our service. So other companies that were in, different verticals, but in the same industry, wanted to create short-term rental companies, management companies. So they'd come to us and they would white label us. And, we didn't have really good agreements in place. And it ended up, not being good for us both times. So learning that the hard way, just make sure you have a really good contract, a really good agreement. And we do offer month-to-month agreements, 6-month terms, 1-year terms as well. So we have different options for hosts, but they all need to be very, very good, and making sure you're covering yourself, but also being really, really good for the host as well. So yeah, I think just because we didn't have a good one in place, it caused a lot of issues in the past.
Yeah. One of the number 1 questions I get all the time is, hey, Brooke, can you share a rental agreement with me? And I got asked this question so many times. I said, you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to look at like all the different agreements. And I had my agreement from Vantage, but I looked at all the different agreements. I consolidated them with the best parts of each one. I took, I made it simple too. I didn't want it to be like, 50 pages. You see some of these agreements, it's crazy. So I simplified it. I worked with my attorney and I said, hey, can you build a general agreement that like addresses all these things that we've talked here? I then consulted with Jacoby Olin. Jacoby Olin has done more mergers and acquisitions than anybody in this space. He's seen deals literally blow up and go sideways because of their management agreement wasn't right. So I made sure I got his blessing with it. I got all the landmines to avoid. spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to create the perfect, ideal management contract. And guess what? I'm giving it away for free. If you go to comparent.com/resources, you can download it. It's called the Smart Rental Agreement. It stands for a simple management agreement of rental terms. And it will become the gold standard of management agreements. People have seen this. Now, you still need to take this to your attorney to kind of get those localized laws and things like that. But it gets you like 90% of the way there, because we've thought about all those landmines that have happened from the legal standpoint, from the M&A standpoint, from my 17 years of experience in there. But again, go to comparent.com/resources. You can download it for free.
I already did. I'm on there right now. That's awesome. I'm going to make sure.
I think, Brooke, we could definitely put a link there in the show notes to that. I think that's a great resource, because it's one of those things where you don't really know where to start with it. And I'm with you, Brooke, where it's like that one thing repeated over and over again that ends up being a gotcha later on, I think is painful. Yeah. I when I was, I had this kind of advice given to me at some point early on, where it's like, assume the person on the other side is going to act at some point in bad faith. Like they're going to do something to try to screw you over. You hope that's not the case. You hope you vet the right people. Back to what Chad said earlier, we talk with them, we converse with them, but at some point someone's going to try to screw you a little bit. And that scenario, what would you want to be able to refer back to and point to and say, hey, remember we agreed on this, and here's the way that we agreed on it. And I think if you operate in that way, usually you can get to a, more fair contract on both sides. And, most things are what I've also learned, unfortunately, is that a lot of things are not enforceable. So you got to do business with the right people. Agreement's not going to save you from someone wanting to screw you over. It may end up costing you more time, effort, energy to try to get the money out of them that just eating it and moving on. Unfortunately, I've had to learn that lesson a lot over the years, but, if you have it in place, I've learned people tend to want to stick with what they said they were going to do. So like most people are honest, most people are going to do the right thing. And I think that's a good one there. So.
Well, yeah, it goes back to our, like you said, making sure you're bringing on the people that you would love to work with. Because the ones that, if you're bringing on people you don't like to work with and you don't have a good contract in place, then you're going to want to get out of this business quick, real fast.
How would you like to log in every day to your laptop or have a phone call and there's 9 messages waiting and you hate every person on the other end? It's like not very much, not very good.
So that's good.
Well, number 7 then, Chad, goes a little more practical, talking about revenue increasing technologies. I'm assuming maybe this is dynamic pricing, but maybe there's another take that you have on that. So walk me through kind of what that means to you, revenue increasing technologies. How have you kind of helped improve some of the revenue and rates management piece side of your business?
Sure. So I think, dynamic pricing, I think, is just the bare bones basic part of this, right? Flat rate pricing is a thing of, the 1990s, and it doesn't work anymore. But, most people are doing dynamic pricing, but they're just plugging in a base price and a minimum price and set it and forget it. And that doesn't work that well anymore either, right? Like you need true professional management, and if anyone can go in and use dynamic pricing and plug those things in, there's got to be more. There's got to be another level. So we take that to another level by not only going in and creating our own algorithms on top of the algorithms that are in the dynamic pricing tools, and then going in and physically editing the prices every single day based off of that. But more so what I was getting at here is using other tools that help with listing ranking other than just price, right? Like what amenities could you have that you don't have currently that would cause you to rank closer to page 1 or on page 1? And a lot of times these tools can show you tons and tons of them. Like people forget to check room darkening shades button on the Airbnb amenities, and like almost everyone wants room darkening shades when they're staying at a place. People just go through those amenities sections so quick when they're creating their listings. And if they really, really focused on this part of listing creation, that they would have a much faster start when it comes to getting the bookings. Because these sites, they care about all that stuff. They care about every little detail in the listings. And if you're not going to do it yourself, you better have a professional manager who's really going to care about the listing, instead of just try to get it up quick and get a couple bookings, because it just doesn't work anymore. So there's a handful of softwares that do this. RankBreeze is one of them. We've enjoyed working with them for a while now. There's some newer ones that are coming out. I wouldn't be able to name drop them because I'm not working with them currently, but I know we used to. But yeah, RankBreeze is software like that really helps. They give you click through rates, booking rates, all of those. How long people are looking at your listing. So all of those things really matter, and it can help you dial in your pictures, your amenities, anything else when it comes to really optimizing your revenue for the listings. So yeah, we started to use a lot of different technologies that have helped us maximize each property.
It's a brilliant idea if you think about it. It's like SEO for your Airbnb listing. I haven't used them. I've chatted with Kevin, I think is his name, but it's a great concept. So it's curious to see how the results are.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Chad. I think that probably the pricing is just one part of maybe 7 or 8 parts. I think most people, and that's almost become like a default, like you said. I mean, obviously we're using dynamic pricing, or I have interesting. I have a few clients that don't trust the dynamic pricing tools because they go, hey, I look at this stuff all day, every day. I know exactly what my competitors are charging. And they kind of claim they're smarter than the pricing tools, which I don't know, maybe they are. I mean, it depends on maybe how much data you have and stuff like that. I think in a big market, that's probably not the case, but in a small market, maybe it's possible, particularly if you have really unique inventory. But yeah, there's some people that kind of don't trust these tools, but you're right. There's so much more than just putting the rate the right way. There's also like you said, the amenities, the photography on the listing, the descriptions, like you said, click through rate traffic, all those things that make a difference. So that's an interesting one to noodle on about this idea that there's kind of like 7 or 8 pieces. Pricing is one of them, of course, but there's many other components to that.
Well, and each market has its own unique amenities that people are looking for. Right? Like some markets and some areas, like people want to have their like a workspace, a separate workspace where maybe your listings for traveling workers, or it's in a hotspot for that. So you have to have that checked if you want to rank high. So we're always talking to our hosts and saying, hey, there's so much potential if you do this, this, and this, or if you buy this amenity and do this. Will you let us do this for you? Because you're going to most likely make a lot more money in the end. And that's what hosts want to hear, right? They want to see how they can improve. They don't just want to, give their property away and make the same amount of money every single year.
I think the one battle, I'm curious how you handle this, Chad, before we move on to the next one, is also like, what am I spending that's worth the bang for the buck and what is not? Like we have a client, for example, who tested saunas and he was like, I think that a sauna will increase demand. It's reasonable to assume that it will, but he put one in and then he's like, well, it didn't lift as much as I hoped. So he kind of giving it more time and he's not sure. But unfortunately, he kind of had to make like a $4,000 bet, assuming that was going to drive more rental revenue, which we think it will, and maybe eventually it'll pay it back, but it's not going to be like an instant thing. It's not like he's going to get his $4,000 back right away. Whereas in the same market, a hot tub is like guaranteed. Like if you go from not having a hot tub to having a hot tub, it's like guaranteed that's going to work better and get more demand. So I'm just curious, like, how do you like rank choice them based on like the cost of it and how much of a headache it's going to be to get it in there? Or what's kind of your experience there?
Yeah, sort of difficult to quantify that. Now, a lot of these softwares like RankBreeze are trying to do that, and they're trying to, but it's tough to trust everything, right? Like if you click the hot tub button, is it really going to add 10,000 of revenue or not? And we know it is going to add a good bit. But yeah, as for like getting a return on your investment on each of them, it is difficult to rank. But I would say that, like you said, if you're creating a chart, the least expensive thing that's going to be the most pleasing to the guest is going to give you the biggest return. Right. So figuring out exactly what that is. But first and foremost, making sure you have all the basics covered with the amenities, because if you don't have those, the fancy stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
I was at a conference yesterday, the Poconos short-term rental conference yesterday up in the Poconos Mountains, and they had a keynote speaker, and he was talking about just optimizing your listing and things like that. And one thing he did was he actually went out and bench ranked the top listings in a market and what amenities did they all have that they shared. In this particular market, it was hot tub 88 out of 100 had it, game room 80 out of 100 had it, fire pit 79 out of 100, and he went all the way down to like the top things. But one thing, and then tangential, I think that was a different market. That might have been that was for the Poconos, but he actually said, he made this comment. He said a pickleball court is worth $48,000 in annual revenue in Scottsdale, Arizona. Just installing a pickleball court. And he's like, he can quantify it by looking at one property versus the next, very similar properties. that it's worth $48,000 in additional rental income, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think the tough part about that is like what you're saying a second ago there, Chad, is can you do a scientific test? Can you actually find two listings? And when there's enough data, Brooke, I think that's feasible, right? You can find two listings similar, one has it, one doesn't. But it's really challenging when it's like, yeah, this one's nicer, but like this is very problematic in mountain view markets or mountain markets. Well, this one has amazing views and it has the hot tub. So is it the hot tub that's really clicking people, or is the views? Because if you put a hot tub in a property with kind of crappy views, like it's probably not going to give you the same juice as when like you have amazing views. You could almost skip the hot tub and probably be fine, right? So that's where all the nuance and all the detailed discussions need to occur with that customer to get them in the right spot. So
yeah,
definitely part of it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe number 8 here, Chad, is an extension of what we talked about earlier on the contract piece, but maybe there's more to it than that. Number 8 was not consulting legal professionals faster in certain situations would have given you perhaps more peace of mind, and the cost maybe would have been worth it. So maybe it's also the owner contract thing, and then other legal situations. What's kind of been your experience working with the people we love, we call lawyers?
Yeah, a little overlap there. I think that for the contract piece, it would have been huge, right? Talking to them, and then disputes, right? Like, or say we have a guest fall on a property and they're upset and maybe they're blaming us for some reason. Talking to legal professionals first before pulling all of our hair out and getting nervous about lawsuits, things of that sort. And then also with hosts, right? Like, if you did bring on someone bad, and they're trying to pull one over on you, what do we do? Is it worth it to go to court? Do you send a letter? What should be the best strategy? And then also for just, making sure you're doing business legally in, all the places you're doing business, right? And getting that peace of mind that way. So I think that's, was a huge thing, because for a while we were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, and and that's, you can do that for a little bit, but you got to make sure you're all buttoned up.
Yeah. I think that's a common one. I think, getting all the paperwork lined up is a common one. Well, let's kind of bring us to a close here. We got 2 more. Number 9 here is all about hiring. So maybe curious kind of your thoughts on this. Hiring someone out of need based out of fit. I think this also belongs on our greatest hits album, Brooke, that we'll put together here at some point. Acting too quickly when hiring and led to a bad fit that could have been avoided. What's kind of been the process that you've put in place now to hopefully find more of the right people and not just hire the first warm body that shows up?
Yeah. When we were doing a lot of the white labeling, I was not only growing Checkmate, but I was growing 2 other businesses at the same time. Our team was overwhelmed. We needed people bad. We were hiring people every single week. And if people met the right, credentials, essentially, if they had the right credentials, we would just bring them on, because we didn't have time to find the true right person.
And the right credentials were fogging a mirror?
Yes. Yeah, pretty much. Fogging a mirror. That's a good one. So yeah, they, essentially stayed for 2 months, paid them a lot of money. They ended up leaving. And it happened not only with, United States people, but virtual assistants as well during that time. And we realized, hey, we don't want to do this again. I also don't want to grow other people's businesses anymore. I want to grow my own. So we made that decision, which allowed us to scale at a much better rate. But same thing like bringing on a client. It's all about, not only about, what's on your resume, what have you done in the past, but who are you? Are you a good personality fit for our business? Are you going to be someone who's committed here for the long term? And we just didn't take the time to figure that out before. And that's something now that we do all the time.
How do you vet them? I'm curious. How do you do that vetting process to, make sure you are bringing on that right person? Because it's so hard,
Oh, very, very hard. And, once again, you can ask all the right questions. People can make up answers. They do all the time to get jobs, right? But you got to see through that. And once again, go back to the gut feeling. When we hired one of the people we hired in the past, I didn't have a good gut feeling about it, but we needed the person. I was like, I don't know if this is the guy or girl, right? And it wasn't, because your gut and your heart doesn't lie, and people need to trust that a little bit more. We have a special intuition as human beings, and we need to tap into it, and especially when it comes to other people. So I think, getting all the right questions, very important, but not everything is analytical. It's got to be, there's got to be a feeling there that this is the right person. And that could still be wrong, right? You could still end up making a mistake, but I think the chances are going to be a lot less.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, Chad, too, where like even the best managers, even the best companies miss all the time too. Like you can use the personality assessments and it increase your chances, right? But like no one's batting 1,000. I don't care who you are. You're going to make a mistake now and again, and we've all just had to go through that process, unfortunately, I think. And I'm sure I'll make a hiring mistake in the future. I'm sure you will too, Brooke. You try to nail as many as you can, but every once in a while you're just going to miss, and all you can do is try to increase your chances of success. I feel like.
Well, and that's what they say with those psychometric personality assessments is it's stacking the cards in your favor. You know what I mean? It's one data point that gives you a little bit of an edge, but maybe that little bit of an edge is enough, and because I look at some of the team members we have on our team that I would have never hired based on purely their profile. And but they were recommended by another colleague. They're like, you don't understand, this girl is incredible. Like we worked for her for 3 years. She is she's just an absolute baller. And but she wasn't the right profile. But I went with their recommendation, and she literally worked her ways up the ranks, and now she's running overseeing 3 departments. So
same thing with us. When it comes to hiring part of our team, I always go to my team and say, hey, what about do you know any family or friends or anyone that you think would be a good fit? And I would say over half of our staff, they're all family or friends, or they go to the same church, or and that connection, right? If you have multiple people who are from the same community working for you, makes it harder for people to leave too. They don't want to leave because they're working with people they like and that they know, and they don't feel like a stranger in the business. So I think that's really helped to congeal our team. And we've had a lot less turnover than most companies in the industry when it comes to staff because of that. Having a family-like atmosphere, and if that means hiring family, then that's what it means. So it's been very valuable for us.
Right on. Well, awesome, Chad. Well, we hit number 10 already, which was growing other people's businesses instead of your own. So luckily that was already mentioned. So that kind of brings us to a close here. Well, Brooke, I think you got one more question for Chad before we let him depart for today. Although we might have to do a little modification, maybe not, like we did last week. But what are your thoughts here? How do we leave Chad on this one?
Yeah. So if you could go back in time, Chad, let's go back to 22 years old. So if you go back to your 22-year-old self and give yourself a little piece of advice, what would it be?
That's a fantastic question. So what I would go back and tell myself, short and sweet, I would say it's worth it, right? Everything that you're doing is worth it. Because, when I go back and think about what I was thinking at the time, is all of this worth it? What I'm doing, what I'm trying and failing at, and all the businesses I'm trying to start and all the videos I'm watching and books I'm reading, is it worth my time? And that's, I think, a fear of most entrepreneurs, right? We're afraid that we're wasting our time on something that's not going to work. And even if that thing doesn't work, you're getting that cause and effect, action and reaction experience that's going to make the next thing more likely to work. And, so that's been the case in my life. So I think if I could go back, I would give myself the confidence that I would have needed back then, that luckily I had, right? But I would tell myself it's worth it. Keep going. It's worth it.
I love that. That's great. Great way to end it.
That is a great way to end it. Well, you know what else is worth it? A few minutes of your time, or not even a few minutes of your time, a few seconds of your time. Leave us a podcast review. So go to your app store, go to iTunes and Spotify. That's where we get the most downloads. Click follow, click subscribe. That way we get more listeners coming in the show. We always appreciate that. And then also click 5 stars, leave us a review. We appreciate that as well. So thanks so much for your time, Chad. We appreciate it. We'll have a new awesome episode coming in next week. And thanks so much for your time and attention.